I think one conversation that everyone needs to have is, what do you see your role as in a relationship, and what do you see my role as? Let's discuss all the needs and desires. I would argue 90% of people enter into a commitment not even knowing the full list of what this person wants and expects or is hoping for out of this.
So roles and responsibilities in a relationship. Is that in a dating relationship or in a marriage relationship?
It could be boyfriend, whatever level we're trying to go to next. So if right now we're trying to just be boyfriend and girlfriend, let's define that. I think defining it for marriage as well, if that's the ultimate end goal, would be smart. Because what's the point of
spending
doing
2 years dating?
Yeah, and then we find out we're on two different pages for marriage.
But why do people not have this roles conversation before they commit?
So what's popping in my head right now is a lot of people are ashamed to state what they want.
Gosh.
They feel like they're not allowed. So, perfect example. There are some men out there, and even some women, who are sticklers when it comes to your physical appearance. All right? And they have certain expectations as far as how they want you to look. But society, family, friends tells them, oh, that's shallow. Oh, if you love them, that shouldn't matter. So then people become hesitant to say, this is what I'm expecting, this is what I want. Also, because at that point, you already like this person. Again, there's this fear of, if I say what I really want, I may lose what I'm hoping to hold on to right now. All right? So let me just find a way to dance around this and hope we can discuss it later. I also think some people just don't truly know and understand themselves enough to articulate what it is that they need and desire in this relationship. So too many people haven't spent time just really asking themselves, okay, what is important to me? What's gonna make me happy? And what is it that if it's not involved in this relationship is not going to allow me to show up 100%? So basically and I'm just using this as a random example, if you're a man and you value a woman who's cooking for you, and you say, all right, if she's not cooking, that's gonna make you miserable to the point that you will no longer be showing up 100% for this relationship, then you should not sacrifice a woman who can cook. Plain and simple. Whatever it is, if it's for a woman, communication or going out often, certain lifestyles, all these things need to be discussed. And I just think that people they hope for the best rather than face the reality of what may be going on right now.
And I think, I speak for myself too, but I think I know a lot of people lean too much on the sexual chemistry, right? Whether it be the desire, the feeling they have between each other, or the actual act of sex that feels so good with the dopamine. You're just like, this feels so good to be with this person, that they don't want to rock the boat and ask those questions or communicate.
And here's what's crazy about that. For women, I can't tell you how many women have had sex with men. The sex wasn't that great. It was nothing special. But she likes him so much that she pushes past that.
Really?
Yes, absolutely.
How important is great sex for a relationship to last?
In my opinion, it's extremely important. So consider what you just mentioned with the oxytocin. The oxytocin is released through orgasm, all right? So if you're not having sex that takes you to orgasm, you're not getting, at least from my knowledge, maybe I'm wrong, but you're not getting the full dose of oxytocin there. I also believe, I view oxytocin as like a God mechanism, meaning it was put there to help two people stay bonded together. Yes. So if we are married or whatever, and we're having great sex consistently, we're gonna be much more bonded to each other. If we're not having great sex, we don't have that bond anymore. You see what I'm saying? Now it's so much easier for things to get in between. So I think that it's extremely important, but I will say that great is subjective, and what level of quality that man or that woman needs is going to vary. But they have to have their needs satisfied, or else you're asking for trouble.
So this conversation about needs needs to happen before you get committed, right? Needs, response, roles, and how you're going to play, how I'm going to play a role in this, how you're going to play a role in this. What would that conversation look like? People have been together, dating for a couple of months. They're thinking about getting connected. Should they say, hey, here are the 3 things I want to talk about? You know, Stephan Speaks said that we got to have these 3 conversations. One's about needs, one's about roles. What was the third thing?
What did we say? I don't think we even mentioned the third one. Yeah, we didn't get to the third one yet.
What would be the third one, the third conversation to have? Or
the third conversation to have, oh man, I just think it's about how we need to communicate when there is an issue. I think we lack having a structure of communication to where if there's an issue that needs to be resolved, we understand how we go about this. You know, when you're trying to fix things on the fly or handle things on the fly, you're now at the mercy of your emotions and where that may take you in that moment. So by having something that we agreed upon, okay, we take maybe 10 minutes off in our own corners, then we come back and we discuss this, or we write a letter, or, you know, some people have the rule, we don't go to sleep mad at each other. Having those structures in place, because the communication, without healthy communication, the relationship's not going to last, and it's not going to be successful. So it's important to have something laid out so we know how to go about this.
Yes.
You know, I'm a huge fan in writing letters, even when it comes to discussing deep issues. So maybe implementing that in the process. But once we can agree to a structure and agree to, we will always make time to sit down and talk about these things, as well as adding constructive criticism. So I think I mentioned this to you before, like I believe in relationship checkups. So that's another part of the structure where maybe we agree every 3 months or 6 months, whatever it is, maybe once a month, where we have a time where we sit down and we go over, all right, what's good here? What needs to be improved? What aren't you happy with? Let's consistently, constructively criticize so we are aware, because what happens in so many relationships is that, let's say you're not happy about something, but you guys never make time to talk about it. So now it lingers. And in that lingering, now you're catching an attitude. Now they're mad at you, but they don't understand that at the root of it is this issue that was never expressed. Mm-hmm. So now they feel like you're being stupid or you're acting crazy or whatever. Now that turns into a lack of intimacy, because if she's feeling some type of way emotionally, she's not going to be sexually receptive to her man. Right. Now that turns into more resentment. And you see, it just dominoes. And it just gets worse and worse. So we have to establish communication structure early as possible.
I love that. You know, something that Martha and myself started to do before we got into a commitment. I said, listen, the only way, you know, this works for me, one of my needs is that we enter the relationship in some type of therapeutic coaching experience. It doesn't have to be a therapist. It doesn't, you know, whatever we want to do, we need a third party that we can sit with once every couple of months and talk about agreements and just making sure we're staying on track with what we want in the relationship. Because that's something that I always wanted but never created. And I said, listen, this is the only way this will work for me, is creating that, making sure that need is met. Yeah. She was like, I'm down. And what that did for us was it allowed us early on to create an agreement about how to communicate when things were uncomfortable, right? And one of the agreements was like, listen, I'm never going to yell or raise my voice, but I can't have someone else in my space doing the same thing. Like if you scream and you yell because you can't manage your emotions, that doesn't work for me. And if you want to yell at another person, then cool, but that's not going to be me.
Yeah.
And so we created that agreement, right? And there hasn't been yelling. There's been uncomfortable conversations, but we have agreements on how to communicate with each other so it doesn't escalate.
Exactly.
And it's been a beautiful practice because we both have an agreement and there's a third party that witnessed the agreement, you know, as opposed to, no, I never said this. People do it all the time.
Yeah.
You create something you talk about when you're all loving and kind, but then a year later, like, I never said I'd do these things, right? And so I think it's for me, it's been really helpful to just over-communicate in some ways and be like, these are what I need, this is what I want, and are you in alignment with this?
Yes.
That's been really powerful. So this masculine and feminine energy is something that you say has been, you know, people have been confused about lately, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Why are people confused about understanding and stepping into their masculine or feminine energy?
So I'm trying to find the right way to say this, but I'm just going to say it. Society has been pushing for equality so hard that they're now causing a lack of balance between men and women. And don't get me wrong, I mean, I'm all for equality in certain areas, right? But I think we have to recognize we are two different types of people. We are wired differently. if we would come into understanding of our differences, we can create more harmony. We don't need to be like each other. So here's one perfect example of how I feel like it's throwing things off a lot, going back to the sex. So you'll have this push where people are saying, well, women are just like men when it comes to sex. I even one time, many years ago, I won't say the name of the company, but I was brought to a dating app company, and it was me and a few other people, and they had this presentation, and they had this scientist that said there was a study that shows women want sex as much as men. And I disputed it. I was like, no. I said, I think what that study is not taking into account is that you guys are combining intimacy with sex. Women want intimacy, and unfortunately for most women, they feel like they can't get the intimacy unless they go through sex to get it. All right, so just getting a guy to just cuddle with you and touch without it trying to escalate to sex, that's hard for a lot of women. They don't experience that. You talk to a lot of married women, they'll say, the only time my husband wants to touch me is when he wants to have sex. So going back to this, pushing that men and women are the same, so look at it like this. If you're telling men that women are just like us, that man now feels like there's no need for foreplay. There's no need for connection outside the bedroom. There's no need to make sure she's there emotionally or mentally, because we don't need that, all right? When we're ready to go, we're ready to go. It could be World War III outside. We're still ready to go. But that woman, if she is consumed mentally, that's going to hinder her ability to show up sexually.
If she's stressed out.
If she's stressed out, if there's too much going on, if she doesn't feel comfortable and safe in that relationship. Again, the connection outside the bedroom affects the connection inside the bedroom. She needs a little bit more as far as foreplay. And again, is this every last woman? No, but typically this is the case. So by fighting for equality, you're limiting people's ability to have sexual harmony. All right. But if we accept it, okay, these are the differences. This is what I have to do as a man to create a more sexually receptive environment. Well, everybody wins.
What does a man need to do to create a more sexually receptive environment?
So I think the first thing is the connection outside the bedroom. Again, so here's, as we said earlier, women want to feel safe. They want to feel secure. If you can,
but if they go after the safe guy,
remember that's different. They go to the safe guy. That's just a guy who they don't have to be too vulnerable with.
Yes.
But we're talking about creating safety where she can give you all of her love, all of her heart, but she can rest a little easy that it's in good hands. All right? That you have good intentions. That you're not judging her. That's one of the big things. You want to let a woman feel more sexually receptive, you can't make her feel judged. You know what I'm saying? The minute she feels like you're judging her, you're going to look at her some kind of way, you make it harder for her to open up to you in that area.
What about when a woman judges the man or makes him wrong or he's not enough?
I think, I say this. I think it will hurt him in his ability to show up emotionally for her. It doesn't have the same negative impact on him sexually. Can it? Yes, but not as common as it will for a woman. All right? Most men, even though they're feeling some kind of way, they're going to still show up into the bedroom, no problem. But opening up emotionally becomes harder. So that's why a lot of men struggle speaking to their woman and letting her into his life even deeper, because of the fear of she won't respect me if I tell her how I'm really feeling.
Wow.
She'll look at me different. So and again, it highlights the differences of how these actions impact us and the environments they create in our relationship. So I think that we've got to get back to understanding the difference between men and women, the balance of the masculine and feminine, and why that is so important to the success of a relationship.
How do people start to buy into that again and believe in that and start to shift because it's like telling people to completely shift who they are, how they've been acting in order to buy into that, believe it, and not get hurt by stepping into that.
Yes. I think step one is asking yourself, what kind of life do you want to live?
Yeah.
Because a lot of people's struggle with getting in tune with their energy is due to letting outside noise tell them how they should live, what should be acceptable. So for example, if you're a woman and you want to walk in your feminine, and let's just say not even just walking your feminine, let's just say you're a woman and your heart is in having a family, being at home, doing these things. But society's telling you can't do that, that's weak, you can't rely on a man, all these things. Well, it pushes her away from where her heart really wants to be. And now she's at conflict with herself. And how can you create that life that you desire if you're at conflict with yourself? It's the same thing for a man. If you as a man want a woman who can be feminine to you and have a certain lifestyle in the household, but you're letting society tell you, no, 50-50 and all these things, well, you can't do that. Like at that point, you're compromising what you really want, who you really are, and that takes you away from achieving what you're trying to achieve. So each individual has to sit and ask themselves, okay, what kind of life do I really want to live? And what kind of life would I want to live if there was no fear of getting hurt?
Ooh, or fear of judgment.
Exactly. Because now, because I tell you this, if most women, like the topic of being submissive is a hot topic for a lot of women. A lot of women don't like that word. But I always argue that if you sat down with a bunch of women and say, listen, if an angel can come from the sky and say, I will give you the most amazing man, he will tap into all your needs, he will make sure you are protected, never cheat on you. All you need to do is be submissive to him. 90% of women will sign up right away.
What does submissive mean?
Submissive meaning in allowing him to lead in the relationship. Well, let me say this. Because I think when people hear submission, they do think of dictatorship.
Right.
They think of doing as he says. They're thinking of this
His
power
way or the
struggle.
highway.
Yes. Submission, in my eyes, when it comes to relationship, is one, allowing that man to love you. What I mean by that is this. When a man is truly in love with a woman, he wants to do for her. He wants to provide for her. He wants to make sure she's good. If you don't submit to that, you're going to be in this energy that's, I got it, I can take care of it. It's not letting him love you. And in not letting him love you, you're carrying this unnecessary burden that's wearing you down. So even when I speak to men being leaders in the relationship, it isn't to say that women are incapable of doing things. It isn't to say that she's bad at whatever. It means, listen, you letting him take that burden off your back makes everybody win. Right. Because now you can thrive in your element, he can thrive in his. We feel good about taking on that challenge and providing and doing for our women. I've never heard a man complain about having to lead in the relationship as long as he feels loved and respected.
Yes.
If he feels appreciated.
If he doesn't feel loved, appreciated, or respected, then it's exhausting.
Yes, exactly. That's the only time.
If she's complaining that you're not doing enough and you feel like, man, I'm carrying this whole relationship, I'm doing all the work, I'm paying for everything, I'm doing all the chore, and you still don't respect me.
Exactly.
Then it's exhausting.
Exactly. On the flip side, though, there are tons of women who, at a certain point, they don't want to have to be the leader of the relationship.
Why do so many women take it on where they tend to make more money, and maybe the guy isn't working as consistently, or they have a part-time job, or they're a little lazier, let's say. And why do certain women get into a relationship like that, where the man isn't providing necessarily for himself or for the relationship, and then stay with men like that?
It's like we talked about earlier. It's leverage. It's control. It's power. It's he has to value me. It's also, listen, if she's having a hard time dating men of a higher stature, well, it just becomes easier to date that guy. Not to mention, in her defense, that woman, if she's walking more in a masculine energy, she's going to attract men who don't have much going on for themselves.
Why is that?
Because, again, we attract that balance. It's a natural thing. You're not going to see a feminine woman being drawn to a very feminine man. It doesn't happen like that. And that's the same way you won't see a very masculine man be drawn to a masculine woman. He may want to have sex with her. He may want to enjoy some things with her.
He's not going to want to live life with her.
Exactly.
That's interesting.
Because those energies conflict. We need balance. So what happens is that woman that's giving off more masculine, she attracts that man who he needs her. He needs her to stabilize his life. He needs her for the resources. He will tolerate that energy because he does not possess it within himself.
Or he doesn't want to go out there and work hard. Or
exactly.
Whatever, yeah.
So it's easier for him. And so, yes, she's getting more of those guys coming her way than the established man. And again, in her defense, after a while, you start to say, well, maybe I should give one of these guys a chance.
Right.
Maybe I should try this out. Maybe
nice
this wouldn't
guys.
be so bad.
They're good guys, yeah.
Yeah, and you know what? Sometimes they're not even good guys. They're just guys who are willing at that time to put in more effort. So here's the thing. Like, I was speaking to Jay Shetty, and he was saying when he first got with his wife, he didn't have a job. So he was able to spend every day with her, all right? And she kind of got accustomed to this. And I bring his example to say, a lot of times that guy who doesn't have anything going on for himself right now is more available to chase, to pour into, to do whatever
Spend
she
quality
needs.
time with her.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that also allows the woman to fall into the trap of being with this guy, even though he's not really a great guy for her, because he's not doing things to provide for her and make sure she's good.
But he's keeping her attention.
Yes. He is feeding her the attention that she desires, and in return, taking her resources. In a lot of cases.
Yeah, of course.
In a lot of cases.
So with this 50-50 thing, why do you think this is such a big topic, let's say in the last probably 10, 15 years, where it seems like it's 50-50 in the relationship, 50-50 spending, 50-50 taking care of all responsibilities, 50-50 taking care of the kids. When the woman needs to get up and nurse, the husband needs to get up and be emotional support during that time, share the time taking the kids to school, changing diapers, whatever it is that society is saying. Why is this 50-50 thing been so prominent, and why does it not work for both men and women?
All right, so as far as why it has risen to prominence is, again, I think it's this fight for equality. We're fighting so hard and we're losing sight of the bigger picture of balance. Balance is what we need for success, not equality in the relationship. And I would argue that equality in a relationship does not actually exist. Because if you were to examine 50-50 relationships, what you will find is over time, it's going to shift to one person doing more than the other. And I would argue 90% of the time, it's the woman doing more than the guy. Because think about this, the mindset of the man who wants to do 50-50 is very different than the man who's so in love with this woman that he wants to provide for her. His willingness to even accept 50-50, he's gonna be reluctant to do that. It's kind of like going on a date with a guy and one guy's down to pay Dutch and the other guy's like, don't take your card out, I got this. They already have a very different mindset. So that guy who's open to 50-50 from the jump, the chances that he's gonna change later on and wanna take on more is not likely. He's gonna get comfortable in that 50-50 or do even less. Also, consider this, even when we say 50-50 on the bills, 50-50 on the bills, in my opinion, would be 20% of your income, 20% of their income. That's not what a lot of people do. The mortgage is, let's say, $1,500 and we split it $750, but the guy, let's just say, makes $80,000, the woman makes $40,000, right. That's not equal.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. She's making a much bigger sacrifice than he is.
Right.
So that alone eliminates this idea that it's 50-50.
What about the whole raising the kids thing of like, you gotta,
Exactly, raising the kids. Now, of course, are there scenarios where sometimes it's the man who ends up doing more? Absolutely. But in most cases, the woman naturally gravitates to being the one who handles the kids more. Mm-hmm. That's what you're gonna find. So again, you're gonna start to see it get skewed in certain areas to where you're not maintaining this 50-50. But then if we go deeper into why this doesn't work. So one, it doesn't work because it's not really sustainable in the vast majority of cases. I'm not saying no one's ever pulled it off, but in majority of cases, it doesn't work. Number two, there was a study that shows, I believe it was a study, that said egalitarian relationships are like the most sexless marriages or the most sexless relationships.
Egalitarian meaning like
equal.
50-50
equal, you know what I'm saying?
Sexless.
Yes.
Why is that?
Because basically you're neutralizing the masculine and feminine polarity.
The polarity of it.
Exactly. It's now just neutral.
Flat.
It's flat. It's not, there's no excitement there. There's nothing there. It kind of reminds me of this guy, I don't want to put him on, but I don't know his name, so I guess I could say it. There was this guy on Twitter, I think it was like late last year, and he posted that how his wife just came home from like a 16-hour shift or something crazy like that, and here she is shoveling the snow in the driveway, and how he's so proud of her. Let me get her coffee ready. And the commenters ate him up. Like, they went in. But, in his mind, we're equal, we're 50-50, look at her doing all these things. But in reality, if a woman has to come home to a man that puts her in that position all the time, doesn't step up, she's gonna start to lose attraction. And you're again overburdening the woman. What a man has to understand, and it's actually mentioned in the book, The Way of the Superior Man,
yes,
where he says, don't make your woman your everything. I think what men underestimate is that women are in their head a lot. They're constantly thinking, constantly processing. So if too much is on her plate, she becomes mentally exhausted, mentally
Stressed,
worn down.
overwhelmed.
Yes. So when the woman says, I'm too tired for sex, the man thinks, well, you weren't doing nothing all day. Her mind was a million different places all day. By the time she got to this moment, she does not have the energy. When the mind goes, the body goes with it. So when you put too much in front of her, you are taking away her ability to thrive in certain areas. So as the book mentioned, you want to identify as a man, what do I need most from her? What's going to be most important from me? Let's now hone in on those things and find someone else to take care of the rest.
What are the things that men need most from women in general?
What are some of the things?
What are the things that you think men need most from women in general?
I think
in a relationship.
Yes, support. Support, and let me add to support by saying a belief in that man. I think we need a woman that believes in us, that kind of reveres us, so to speak, has that respect for us and views us in a great light. Because again, as men, we're going to have moments where we may question ourselves, we may feel down. And if that woman that we're with can't pour into us in that way, in that moment, with a genuine energy of, I believe in you, I support you, I love you, that's going to be tough to deal with. All right. I think also sexual satisfaction for most men is extremely important. I think women underestimate how serious of a need sexual satisfaction is.
For a man.
Yes. And again, it goes back to not understanding we are wired very differently. By biology, looking at it from a biological standpoint, we have more testosterone than they do.
More sex drive.
Exactly. We naturally have more libido. Part of the reason why is because, and I hope I'm saying this correctly, the DNA's main primary objective is reproduction.
Yes.
It has to keep us ready all the time. And so because of that, that's why I'm sure you're familiar with semen retention.
Tell me.
Okay, so semen retention is basically the practice of going without any sexual release over a period of time.
Yeah.
And people have reported where over time they've developed, like men, they've developed deeper voices, more muscle mass, more confidence, more focus, all these things.
By holding on to the
Yes, by
release.
holding on to
By
that
not
life
releasing.
force, so to speak, and not releasing it in any way, shape, or form.
Wow.
What is happening, based on my research, what is happening is the body's saying, oh, you're not reproducing.
We don't need to keep.
You're not mating with anybody. I need to make you more desirable.
Really?
Yes, because I need you to go do something.
Wow.
So that's why I'm going to raise your testosterone. I'm going to deepen your voice. I'm going to let that masculine energy pop out. You're going to get more confident. You're going to be more comfortable around women. This is what happens. So that's why men who kind of bury themselves in constant sexual release through their own means, they don't understand they're robbing themselves. Now, some people don't believe in it. I'm a huge believer in it. I believe it's absolutely real and it's extremely beneficial. But back to the point of men and women being so different, and it doesn't mean that there aren't women who need sexual satisfaction as well. And there are women who may be just as sexual as a man. But in general, on average, a man needs it way more. Biologically speaking, he needs it way more. So to neglect him of that, it causes a lot of freaking problems.
What happens if a man doesn't have the sexual release and experience and expression in an intimate, committed relationship long term?
Well, I think another thing that it can do to you is raise aggression. Because again, with the increase of testosterone, aggression also increases. So there was a woman on TikTok who mentioned that we need more monogamy because as monogamy decreases and less men have a partner that they can mate with and be sexually engaged with, you'll start to see a rise in rape. You start to see a rise in sexual abuse. You start to see a rise in crime. There's all these negative things that start to happen because you have a group of men who aren't getting any action, who start to get frustrated, and it starts to pour over into negative ways. Now, granted, I don't think we can solve every man getting it or not, but it just speaks to what's happening within a man when he goes without for so long, unless he learns. I will say this, because it is possible to also, I believe, to channel that energy into other ways.
Yes.
So as mentioned in
Way Superior Man, he talks about
yes,
this.
and Think and Grow Rich talks about it, sexual transmutation.
Yeah.
Yes. So I do believe, we know about it, so I do believe.
The fight of all men have to deal with like managing this energy.
Exactly. And so now what happens is if you are not an ambitious man, or you're not a man that has created avenues for you to release that energy into something more productive, well, it's getting trapped, and now that causes a problem. You see what I'm saying?
Yes.
So you've got to find a way to release it somehow. But I think over time, like, we can only sexually transmute so much.
Gotta release at some point.
So that's just really hard. But again, there's some men who have conquered it better than others. So I'm not going to act like men can't do it. It's just not that easy. Hey, thank you for watching this video. Be sure to check this one out right here, and I'll see you there. So I'm sure you've heard the saying, you only get one chance to make a first impression. And I think we can agree, for the most part. I mean, not for the most part, it's just a true thing, because the first impression is the first impression. And there's only